If it weren't for copyright, I would have loved to have started with Vangelis's score. Hello, everyone. Welcome to You'll Probably Agree. Today, we have from Kicking the Seat with us, Ian Simmons on. And thank you so much for coming on, Ian. I know I was supposed to come on your show last Monday, and then I got called in to do tech for something that they didn't need me for, anyways. So that was great. But, anyways, we were going over the list of movies that were ahead of its time. And we landed on Blade Runner. I think we were going to do Blade Runner and Citizen Kane, but then I'm like, well, it's a little hard to do both of those because they're both monumental movies, and Citizen Kane is like the gold standard for like all movies ever. So I'm like, that's a lot to pack in, like that's. But I'm glad we're doing this one because Blade Runner is one of those movies that I think it was ahead of its time because people, it's not that they like weren't ready for it. They just didn't want something that was that cerebral, that dystopian, that sad, that much of a downer after living through the 70s. And once the 80s came around and Reagan's like, go out and roller skate and have a great time, everyone kind of gravitated towards that. And the funniest thing is that it's kind of like an anti-corporation film that came out during a time when corporations were beginning to, take everything over. And yeah, I can see why people didn't want to see it, but a lot like Space Odyssey, it was one of those movies where you have your fun, silly sci-fi movies, but then you get your deeper ones that not just visually, but subtextually. And I think this movie was a little too nuanced for the time, and people didn't want to see it. What were your thoughts on Blade Runner when you saw it, and what are your thoughts now? And I'm not sure which cut you saw, but I got the final cut, and the director's cut.
Is that a
So
laser disc?
yes, it is.
Nice.
I just don't have
Oh.
the. It's just my player's broken, but yeah, and it's a lot to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah, Blade Runner, I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater when it first came out, which is wild because I would have been 5 years old. My parents had a habit of taking me to wildly inappropriate movies when I was a wee lad. So I didn't really watch it until probably the late 90s, and I didn't like it. And I revisited it, a few years later, sometime in the 2000s. I got to appreciate it. I've watched a couple of the different cuts for this show because we were especially talking about the reaction in 1982. I
Hmm.
watched part of the theatrical cut, and that's a rough watch
With all that
because
narration.
the narration literally sounds just like it doesn't even sound like Harrison Ford in character. It just sounds like him in the booth saying, "This is the last leg of my contract on this picture. Let's get this over with."
You're not far from
Ridley.
what it was.
It's too on the nose. I understand why they decided to add this in because
Hmm.
the other cuts without the narration, it's like watching a Terrence Malick or a Chloe Zhao film. Just very languid. I mean, it's not a criticism, but to your point, I don't think people were ready for it back in '82. Now, and there's a lot of different factors that went into this. One of which is the marketing, because I don't know if you've ever watched the
Hmm.
trailer, the original trailer for Blade Runner, but
Mm,
it's kind of got the somberness and the mood to it, but it also has it shows like all of the action that happens in this movie in the trailer. So people
oh,
are
yeah.
expecting like, oh, it's gonna be cyborgs and gunfights and
Yes,
Harrison Ford getting
Indiana
thrown around.
Jones and Han
Right.
Solo, and yeah, he's gonna go and fight these and then they see it and they're like, "What's this weird art film?" Like when they're watching it, probably.
Yeah, and why did it take me 2 hours to get to the best part? Um, so
Yeah.
there's a lot. I mean, we can talk. Well, I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of it, but there's a lot to talk about in this one.
Yeah, I mean, because when I first saw Blade Runner, I remember I heard about it for years and years and years. And I think the first time I like stumbled upon the scene was when, and spoilers, although this movie came out in 1980. I don't even know if I need to throw up the spoilers
It was
banner at this
82.
point. 82. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even alive when the movie came out. So, like, yeah, I stumbled into it when they were like rerunning it on FX. and it was like the scene where Deckard is fighting Roy, and I just remember watching it, and I'm like, this is like a horror movie. This is kind of interesting and weird, and I haven't seen, because I've heard about Blade Runner for years, but I never really sat down and saw it. And that scene sparked my curiosity. So then I watched, I think it was the final cut of the director's cut. I can't remember. I saw it and I wasn't immediately in love with it. I thought there were some plot holes. I thought it meandered a little bit. But the more times I saw it, I'm like, this movie is, in fact, pretty incredible. And, like maybe it has a few plot holes. Like one plot hole, for instance, is that Tyrell says that they put memories into the machines to keep them in control. And I'm like, well, if you make them think that they have a life, although you're making them slaves, like, don't you think they're going to say, I want my life back? Although they never really had that life and then they staged their mutiny. But that's a nitpick within a movie that I love. I mean, if you know me, I love my like weird, dreamy sci-fi films, like sci-fi films that are kind of like, oh, I can believe this is happening. And it just takes its time and it moves slowly. And to that person in film school who a long time ago told me, oh, you don't like slower moving movies because I didn't think No Country was for Old Men was that great, especially compared
Blasphemy.
to especially compared to There Will Be Blood. Yeah, I said that, and he's like, "Well, you just don't like slower moving films," and I'm like, "Dude, my favorite movie is Space Odyssey. That movie's like the definition. Like, it's just a bunch of shots of people slowly floating in space a lot of times. Although I never felt that movie was slow moving, especially during the Stargate sequence. Which, yeah, I mean, if I ever experiment with drugs, that'll be the movie. Yeah." But
Oh, speaking of Space Odyssey, real quick, I think the first time I saw that was on commercial television. So when they
ah.
got to the Stargate sequence, I swear they went through like 2 commercial breaks, and those colors were still going.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the primary call. I don't know how they filmed that sequence. I think from what I vaguely remember, they were like filming car headlights and they like did something with the exposure to double expose it. So then when it passed through the lens, it looked like it was coming at you really fast. And they did something like that, but I don't think it was like car headlights. It was like something else. But it's something to do with exposure. I'm not smart enough to know what they did. That's their job, not mine.
Well, now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever looked that up, but what you're saying with the car headlights, even if it's not true, it sounds or feels true because of the way that movement was very specific, and now I
Mhm.
don't know how I didn't see it. Wow. That's great.
Yeah, because you can see light passing through the lens, and I think the way they had it pass through via the exposure is that and probably the speed of the frame. They probably cranked up the frame rate on the camera so then it looked like it was going right at you, or it could have been the opposite and they slowed it down. But it creates this warping effect. But I gotta, you know what? I gotta experiment and try it myself because the one of the wonderful things about Blade Runner's visuals is that it's like the last movie to use like analog visual effects, and it looks phenomenal to this day. While most movies, excluding what's coming up now, the Project Hail Mary, which uses barely any CGI and it's just noticeable, it looks wonderful. But most movies today look like CGI slop. And if you've seen the pile of shit vampire movie that I saw 2 days ago, it kinda gives you a good reason to say, "You know what? Maybe AI could replace people if they do this bad of a job."
Which which
Uh,
which movie was that?
I was like, Vampires of the Velvet Lounge. I
Oh, you watched that. I saw the trailer for that. I was like, "Wait, that's Mina Suvari and Steven Dorff. Wow."
Yeah. Oh my god, wait till you see all Steven Dorff, like, at one point in the movie, Steven Dorff just keeps yelling, "I'm Ramses, the devil!" And he just says it again and again and again, and it's like, if you take a shot, you'll die when he says it, but at least you'll be dead and you don't have to see the rest of that movie. Yeah. And I did like when I did my reaction to it, it ended up turning into like a 9-minute like anger fueled rant about that movie. Like it's not even fun bad. It's just boring bad. It's like the best way to describe this movie is, let's say if you walk into Blade, you think you're going to see Blade, but instead you don't see Frost, although Frost is in this movie. You see like one of the girls in Frost's posse as they just go around and murder people for 2 hours. The movie's like a porno without the porn, or an element
Oh,
film, in other words. Yeah.
oh, that's unfortunate. I'm glad you took that silver bullet instead of me. Wait, that's werewolves. Never mind. I'm mixing up my lore.
I wanted Deckard to come in and shoot me with that double barrel handgun shotgun and just put me out of my minute. Like if Deckard found me and I was a replicant, I'd just be like, come, please, please. Yeah, but no, this movie's great because I never seen the narration version of it. I saw a part of it on TV and I just went, oh god. Oh my god. And yeah, I like this movie because it has those long scenes where you're thinking about what the character is thinking. Like when Roy dies and he gives his tears in the rain speech and he passes away. There's just like a long pause before Edward James almost comes in. And you're probably thinking like, wow, this guy spared me. He ended up valuing life, although he always, gravitated towards death because he was so afraid of it. And what does that mean for me? And it's like that. It's just like all this stuff where you can think about what he's thinking about. And I love little moments like that. The one major problem I have with the movie is the rapey scene, which ruins the love story for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you take that out, and it kind of works, but
Yeah.
you leave that in, it's like I don't care who's a robot in this situation.
Yeah.
This is not cool. I actually went to see Chicago Symphony Orchestra does this series. They've been doing it for a few years, where they show a film at the auditorium theater, and then they have a full orchestra playing the score. And they did that for Blade Runner a couple years ago, and that was great. But when the scene came up, you can tell how many people in the audience had never seen Blade Runner before, because they're like,
Oh.
what is going on here?
Say kiss me. Do it. Like, oh my god. Yeah, at that point I kind of lost a lot of sympathy for Deckard, because it's like they're supposed to be in love, because, well, according to Ridley Scott, very adamantly, according to Ridley Scott, Deckard is a replicant. And you know what? For years and years and years, I thought, that's BS. He's not a replicant. Like look every time he fights a replicant, the replicant kicks his ass. And like when he's fighting Roy, he's like struggling to get up the building. A replicant that's supposed to be made as a soldier is having trouble fighting. But then I watched the movie again, and there's like all these little clues that he's a replicant. Not just the flashbacks to the unicorn that looks like it came from another movie, which it sort of did because it was like a
Yep.
camera test when they did it.
Yeah, it almost looks like cut scenes from Legend, another
It
Ridley
is.
Scott movie, but that was from that movie came out 3 years later. So was he working on Legend while he was doing Blade Runner?
Yes. He said he was doing a camera test. He said it was for Legend, and they
Oh,
didn't know
okay.
what they were doing at the time with it. They just kind of filmed that scene and then he put it in the movie. I have to say, if you don't have the 4K copy of this, phenomenal. There is a disc 2 has this DVD, not a 4K. There's a 4K, a Blu-ray, another Blu-ray, and a DVD. This DVD has a 3.5 hour making of documentary of it. And I watched it and it is fantastic. It gives you like
Wow.
yeah, because you can read the notes on IMDb and Wikipedia, but seeing it come from the horses' mouths and seeing the actual documentation, it's like, whoa. And yeah, basically they were filming a scene for Legend and they kind of inserted it into the movie, which feels weird. But the other hints that he's a replicant is that there's like one shot where Rachel is in his apartment. He's shirtless. He's out of the frame, and he puts his hand on his shoulder. And when he turns around, you can see like the little red in his eyes. And then there's the other scene where Rachel, she's playing a piano in the piano in his apartment, and she said, and he tells her, "I dreamt of music," and she's like, "Well, I dreamt of music too," Or when he's looking at the photos, for the crime scene, it's sort of like someone going through memories.
Mm.
How would he know about the spider memory, for instance, unless all of them had it implanted in them, or at least, or if Tyrell told him it. So now that I see it again, yeah, he might be a replicant, but at the same time, it doesn't matter because it's really about your empathy and being forced to do something you don't want to do, but have to do it because you live in an oppressive society. Because, like, if Deckard said, "No, I'm not going to kill these replicants, I don't want to," they say, "Oh, okay, we'll throw you in jail or we'll retire you." And yeah, there's just so many layers to this movie that you can unearth so many times. And I think this might be Ridley Scott's most personal film.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This debate has always kind of bugged me. I mean, and I think I don't remember much about Blade Runner 2049,
Mhm.
but Deckard in that, I mean, he's just grumpy old Harrison Ford. It doesn't seem very replicant-like behavior, on top of the fact that I don't remember much about that movie except that I hated it, even though I
Yeah.
loved Denis Villeneuve. Like, how do they get around the 4-year life cycle that these things
Mm.
apparently have? Um, Also, I feel like if you're gonna make a movie where the main character is hunting down cyborgs, uh, and he doesn't know that he's one, that should be a central part of the movie and not this ambiguous thing. Because that's a really interesting story.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think Deckard's just a cop. Uh, I know it might be an unpopular opinion or a popular opinion, depending on which side of the internet you're looking at. But yeah, that theory always kind of bugged me, because it's
You know
almost like it's almost like there are people who want the movie to be more interesting than it actually is, and so they're like, "Well, what if he's replicant?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, but what if he's a bus driver who's moonlighting as a cop?" It makes just about as much sense as him actually being a replicant, unless because they said that it was, I think, series 6 of the replicants that were the ones that were working as to colonize other planets and things, and then there was the revolt. So maybe he's an older model, but if he is, there's such a prejudice against these things in society that how would he be allowed on the police force? And why would the captain or whatever, M. Emmett Walsh, the great M. Emmett Walsh, bring him back and like beg him to come back for this job if it's such a bad thing that he even exists on Earth?
Yeah, and well, the other thing is that I didn't feel like they did a lot of character development with Deckard, because most of the time he just kind of walks around, eats noodles, investigates the crime scene, gets drunk, and that's it. Like, we don't know much about his childhood or the so-called implanted memories in him or his own memories, or we don't. It's a lot of it is just him sitting and then us trying to figure out what he's thinking. Roger Ebert famously didn't like this movie when he initially saw it. I don't know if he changed his mind, because the funny thing is that, like, this movie was sort of be in his wheelhouse,
Yeah.
about people who are being oppressed, and people who just want equal treatment and stuff like that. Like, those are usually his jam. But this one, he thought it was too visual and not enough story. And I think it was one of those movies that was misunderstood for that. I think a lot of people just said, "Oh, it was a lot of pretty shots, but there's not much going on." But it's like there's a lot going on. It's just that Deckard himself isn't that interesting, which is like one of my problems with it. Where I know you don't like 2049, and that's okay. If everyone agreed on movies would be really boring. But like what I liked about Agent K in 2049 is, like, right off the bat, I leaned forward in my chair when Dave Bautista said, "How could you do this to your own kind?" And I went, "Oh, so this is a story about a replicant who knows he's a replicant, who sort of tries to find his, empathetic or human side. Although these movies are basically all replicants and there are like no humans in these Blade Runner films. Actually, when I was watching the 3.5 hour documentary, Joe Turkel, who plays Tyrell, said that Tyrell's a replicant. And I'm like, what? And what
What?
did they ever say that in the movie?
Yeah. My look, I love the opening of Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
To me, that could have just been a short. Like,
Mhm.
we're gonna call this Blade Runner 2049. Here's a case that happened in the future. It's a short film, and that's it. The problem is we're then saddled with Ryan Gosling doing, because there's like three different Gosling eras.
Mm,
There's the Notebook Gosling, where he's like
mm.
trying to be kind of an actor. There is Drive through at least Blade Runner 2049, where he's just the, hey, I'm going to be whatever you want to map onto me, my blank expressions. And now that we're in the third era, which is Ken, which has infected everything, including, unfortunately, Project Hail Mary, which that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, a little
Um,
bit. I kind of agree with you there. A little bit. Yeah.
ugh. But that's the thing is, for me, I was just watching Blade Runner 2049 thinking, I've already been through this story. There's nothing innovative about this visually because, I mean, by that point, you could literally do anything with
Mm,
digital and or state-of-the-art practical effects. One of the highlights of the original Blade Runner is it's something that no one had ever really seen before in
mhm,
live action. I mean, looks very kind of anime inspired. You had Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott together.
mm.
Both of them had worked in genre-defining pictures before with Alien, and then everything to do with Star Wars and George Lucas. So even though Ford wasn't creatively involved in this, he was still a part of this new thing. Like, wow, that scene where you've got the spinner flying
Mhm,
through Los Angeles in 2019,
mm.
and you've got the giant digital billboard, the Coke ad, and the woman kind of blowing the kiss. I watched this. I just still have the Blu-ray. I haven't upgraded to the 4K, but I watched on my 4K TV today, and like it's still amazing. I don't know how that wasn't achieved with digital effects because it's so seamless and cool.
Yeah.
Um, but so I'm rambling, but maybe 2049 is gonna be another one of those kind of underappreciated movies, because I know it's very divisive, and I'm on the other side of that. But I felt like I was just watching the same thing over again, but it felt like longer and with even less of a point.
Right, right. Well, I will agree to disagree on this one because I know we got heated talking about it last time, but that's okay. We'll do a critic cage match. That's the new idea for YPA. We'll just have
Yeah,
everyone just beat the shit out of each other. Uh,
verbally.
no, physically. No, yeah.
Oh,
It's the new we gotta go with the trends now. They're having UFC matches on the White House lawn. We gotta keep up. Uh no. Anyways, yeah, the thing is with 2049 is that I really kind of like this minimalism in a way. It was a movie where if you see Blade Runner, you see more in the frame, and then 2049, there's more locations, but there's more fog. There's a little less in the frame. It's
you're right.
not.
It does look very cheap.
Yeah, I guess that best cinematography and visual effects Oscars didn't. But
Oh, so you are a fan of Green Book. Got it.
you know what? It wasn't that bad when I saw it. Like
I
I was.
look, I'm a big defender of Green Book, but I also love throwing that out whenever someone, throws out that, well, this movie won Best Picture. I'm like, yeah, so did the movie that you hate.
Actually, I thought Blade Runner 2049 was gypped out of the Oscars. I thought it should have been nominated for Best Picture, and I don't even remember what won that year. But I don't know what will win in 2049. Well, we'll be extinct, so it doesn't matter. Oh, wait, we got still one more year. We got one more year before then. But yeah. Anyways, I know I'm bleak, and I think people didn't want to see a bleak movie, but I think audiences like there's always sort of that ugly sort of stereotype that audiences are stupid. They just like to watch comic book movies and they like to watch dumb trash. But it's like, well, yeah, but they watched Space Odyssey, and then years later they loved it. They watched Blade Runner, and they were expecting a swashbuckling adventure like the ads did for it, and they ended up loving it. Blade Runner 2049, it came out and it bombed just like the first one did. But then years later, people were still talking about it to the point where he even got an honest trailer. And if you got an honest trailer, you've made it. And it's one of those it was one of those movies again where people gravitated towards it because there was more to the surface. Although I will say, if there is a criticism when it comes to Blade Runner versus Blade Runner 2049, is that Blade Runner doesn't really explain anything, where 2049 sort of explains everything, while there are very, very, very long shots of Ryan Gosling walking, which again, that's my jam, but I get why people wouldn't dig that.
Yeah, I mean, the summer of '82, it was packed. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you had Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and
Mhm.
E.T., and
Which
then
came
you
out
also
the
had
same week as Blade Runner and The
right, and then
Thing. Yeah.
and the thing, E.T. like clobbered everybody.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, I think, appreciated in its time, but just not, people weren't running out to see it because it was a hard R graphic horror movie.
Yeah.
And this one, I think people were expecting more, as we discussed, kind of a sci-fi adventure, maybe with like Star Wars meets the Maltese Falcon or something,
Mm.
because Deckard is very much the bogey archetype in here, complete with that awesome, collar that he's got on his trench coat. Um, yeah, it's tough because you want to say that people are open to new things, and they kind of are, but all up to a point.
Mhm.
This is very much an art house movie that was released under blockbuster pretenses, and audiences don't necessarily appreciate when that stuff gets mixed up. I think the only person who can really do that today, possibly, is Christopher Nolan,
Mm.
because I mean, he aside from the Batman movies, he hasn't really been married to a brand. He is
Mhm.
the brand, so he can come out with something kind of on the surface it's esoteric and kind of artsy fartsy, like Dunkirk, and turn it into a
Mm.
smash success.
Yeah, and also he's great at like the way he edits movies. He doesn't hold on to a shot for more than 3 seconds. So his movies are like intelligent ADHD cinema, where like the movies like they have a lot going on in them, but they're also kind of like simple and easy to follow. But he plays with time to manipulate the audience into thinking the movies are more complicated than they really are, but it works masterfully, and I love what he does. And
Yeah.
if people just say, "Oh, he's gimmicky and just uses time," I'm like, "Well, The Dark Knight didn't use time, and that was the best of the Batman films, and Insomnia didn't use time." Although maybe in some ways it did because it's like playing with Al Pacino not being able to stay awake with the sound design and all that. But he knows how not to be tacky. Like, an unfair comparison I do is because Nolan and Burton both rebooted Batman, is that, like, you have Tim Burton, who makes very simple, disposable, pop culture, non-educated pictures, where, Christopher Nolan's movies are like puzzle pieces, but they're like a simple puzzle we can all follow, but we wanna keep going back to see how each piece fit into the other, and that's admirable. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call well, okay. I wouldn't call Burton's early filmography uneducated. I mean, you can't look at Pee-wee's Big Adventure and think, this is just a dumb movie about a guy on a bike. I mean, that's a very smart, funny picture. Batman as well. I mean, I think later on, certainly with his remake of Dumbo and Alice in Wonderland, when he got fully into the Disney cash, the Scrooge McDuck method of like, how much money are you going to give me for this one? Sure, but yeah, there's an intelligence to it. It's not operating on the same level as Tim Burton, but you can go to Ruth's Chris and also order a cheeseburger.
Mm.
So, it's I should say I think you can get one at you can go to a high-end steakhouse and they've got like, the prime filet mignon, and then they also have like a cheeseburger on the menu too. So it's like, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, Tim Burton will always hold a dear place in my heart because Batman was the movie that got me into movies, and God, that came out in '89, and I think I
Mhm.
saw the VHS maybe in '90. So I was, God, how old was I? Like 6 years old, I think, 5,
Oh,
6. Yeah,
breaking my
and
heart. I was 12.
well, 12's a young age, it's not like you were 20, then it
It's
would have been
true.
different. Yeah, that would have been a lot different. Uh, but I remember I saw that movie because I think that got me into movies because I remember I saw Batman, and before that, I saw, like, the Adam West series. So I saw how you can take one thing and make something completely different with the same thing. And that really turned me on, and then I remember I saw Space Odyssey, and it completely blew my mind. And it was funny, the way my grandparents, like, told me about the movie before I saw the movie, it sounded like a bad episode of Lost in Space. They're like, "Oh, they're in this spaceship, and this evil computer hell is trying to kill them." And then one day they fired it up on a VHS tape, but they had, like, a nice Bose home theater system that I now have in my house because they gave it to me, and I love
Oh,
it, and, I'll never forget not hearing "bum, bum, bum, ba-dum," but actually hearing Ligeti, the terrifying opera, sort of where everyone's just going off note, and I've never heard any, and it was the music that got me into it, and I think music is a huge part of movies that often underappreciated, because a lot of scores just sound exactly the same. You see any Marvel film, as long as it's not, composed by Ludwig Göransson, and it sounds like the same temp track that you would use for action scenes, and Vangelis's score to this movie, it made the images come to life even more, and it kinda got you into this mood of hopelessness, that, maybe a lot of people don't like that in movies, but I feel like we want a little too much candy as audiences, and we don't eat enough of our vegetables, and
well, but here's the thing. I mean, I'm all for, dark and dystopian movies too, but movies and entertainment are supposed to be that's why they call it escapism, right?
mhm,
People don't necessarily wanna go and watch a ripped from the headlines movie.
mm,
Sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, Silence of the Lambs is a great example of a very dark and disturbing film, but it's also, entertaining. It's got a couple of great performances in it and some, great back and forth between Starling and Lecter, for example.
mm,
But yeah, Blade Runner, it's unique, but it also is kind of a just a gray looking downer. I mean, it always feels like it's raining or,
mm. Smoke.
well, du this is
Yeah,
smoke. Yeah, that's
yeah,
another good one. Plus, you've got the ambiguous main character who does that thing to his quote unquote girlfriend halfway through the film. So yeah, it's not exactly. We're not talking about Han Solo and Princess Leia here,
yeah.
which uh,
Imagine if that went down with Princess Leia. I don't think she would have taken that. She would have taken a blaster
oh,
and broken his nose,
you
you
saw
know?
what she did to Jabba the Hutt, and that was just for putting her in a bikini.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's why Princess Leia was awesome, man. I don't know.
Hmm.
Padme was cool in, episode 2. They kinda, like, gave her some badass moments, and then they just made her, like, sad and crying in the 3rd one and helpless, and yeah.
I don't know what it is about third movies in the Star Wars trilogies. They just can't stick the landing.
Yeah, I know, even Return of the Jedi, people always say, "Oh, the original trilogy's great." I'm like, "Have you seen Return of the Jedi?" There's, like, moments of brilliance, like, all the stuff with Luke and Vader and the Emperor and Vader's redemption, that stuff's great. The Ewoks, I'm not an Ewok fan, you know? I feel like we didn't need the little people to represent the little people. That's what the rebellion was for, and
I look, I'm a defender of the Ewoks and in general a defender of Return of the Jedi, although I think it is the weakest of the trilogy. And it doesn't have nearly the problems as like the Rise of Skywalker. But
ugh.
I did like I mean, I like it when the in Jedi when the things go south for the Ewoks and they're starting to get killed and like crying over their
Oh, I
fallen
loved
brother
it
and
when they got killed.
yeah, yeah. It's great.
Yeah. When they shot
But
that
anyway,
one
like,
guy right in the tree, he's trying to comfort him. I'm like, get him too, get him too. But I'm evil.
oh,
I'm the dark. Wait, when we did that Facebook test, so which Star Wars character? I really am Anakin, but God help any woman who gets pregnant. I will be very defensive. No,
whoa.
no, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna choke them. I'm gonna be defensive and try to keep them protected. You know, that was one
Yes.
thing. Why didn't they like? She died of a broken heart. Why not a collapsed lung? That would have made more sense in the movie.
I mean, they should have just had her have some, and all it would have taken is like, oh, she had internal bleeding or something. We couldn't save her or something, because
Yeah.
I could see George Lucas writing she died of a broken heart, but it's just like Harrison Ford said about George Lucas's Star Wars dialogue. George, you can write this shit, but you
Yeah.
can't say it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there is the urban legend, and I think it's true that uh, Francis Ford Coppola had a massive hand in the screenplay of Star Wars because
A New
seeing
Hope?
how, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's not called A New Hope, but no, yeah, but
Well,
yeah, it is A New Hope. I mean, it makes sense canonically or whatever. Like,
right. I just didn't know if you meant like the first Star Wars or like the first three Star Wars is.
yeah, no, the first one.
Okay.
Like he came up with a structure where to take it, probably gave the characters personality because they probably didn't have much. Well, they probably did have some of it. But yeah, I mean, then you go to the prequels, and that's like an example where you have a director who has like nothing but yes men and access and unlimited money. And there's a reason why film is a collaborative process. No matter what director you are, even if you're Steven Spielberg, he did make Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He did make 1946 or whatever the piece of even he didn't like it. Even he
1941. Yeah.
41, yeah. Um, you need people on set to come up to you and say, "No, that's a bad idea. Don't do that." And I think that was the problem with the first cut of Blade Runner with the narration, because when they were screening it, they were watching it, and there were those long pauses, where you're supposed to kind of figure out or contemplate what the character is contemplating themselves. And they decided, well, this is confusing. We need to put in a narration. Ridley Scott did agree to do it. And when you hear the voiceover, like outtakes with Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott, Harrison Ford's like, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? And like and he like walked into the booth one day, and he just sees this guy like typing furiously on a typewriter. And he goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Harrison. I'm here to do the voiceover." And the guy just goes, "Oh, go away, go away." Comes back 15 minutes later, gives him his lines to say. So that's why that didn't happen. And that's an instance where I have to give Ridley Scott credit. Like he, did a lot of takes. He drove everyone nuts. They did 18-hour days for 7 days a week. Their final day of shooting was 27 to 28 hours. And in the end, he knew what he was doing. He didn't need all the takes. I adamantly do not think directors need to do a lot of takes, because guess what? Barry Lyndon, yeah, it's one of the greatest period pieces I've ever seen, if not the greatest. It's just like the only one I can see, but Downtown Abbey bores the shit out of me. But Ryan O'Neal's performance, they did 100 some takes and it still wasn't that great. So yeah, it's the director's vision, not the torture they put everyone through. Direct your movie like Sidney Lumet does. Rehearse it, talk about what it means to the actors. So then when you get there on set, you do 1 and 2 takes, go to the next scene. Don't torture everyone. I get it. Like the theory is, well, if we're preparing for this scene, we're preparing to film this movie, why would we want to get there and then get out as soon as possible? I'm like, maybe because of the possibility that someone will be exhausted from set and crash their car, which has happened, many, many times. There's a interesting documentary about this guy from this guy who works on sets called "Who Needs Sleep" that people should check out. But yeah, the making of this movie was a disaster, but through that, you had a clear vision from a director where he knew why he was using all this rain. He knew why he was using all the fog. He knew the character's motivations, and he knew what the movie was going to look like. Uh, Structurally, maybe he didn't, but it worked out. So, Ridley Scott has a good talent of kind of figuring it out on the go when it comes to making movies. 'Cause Gladiator, they kind of figured it out on the go, and it became a classic and won the Oscar. And I don't remember what else was nominated. I went to Traffic, but I can't remember what else was nominated that year. And then he made Gladiator 2, which doesn't exist in my mind.
I never bothered with it. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it
Why?
doesn't. Yeah, Maximus is dead. We don't need. Well, maybe they should have made it a story about him in heaven, and then like someone from hell takes his family. He's gotta get them back. But yeah,
That was wasn't that the original idea or an idea?
I don't know. Was it? I don't know. But yeah, one idea I thought would have been interesting for a different Blade Runner film is I would love to see a story about the mutiny that happens among the Nexus 6 replicants, because you have a story about a robot who is a slave and fights, does whatever he does in all these off-colony worlds for probably some big corporation or whoever the bureaucratic suits in charge are. And eventually that replicant realizes, hey, I shouldn't be treated like this. I'm gonna make a difference. I gotta do something different. We deserve our decency. We're gonna fight back. I would love to see a movie that's just based on that opening scroll, which I have to say, my problem with opening scrolls is you have to retain all the information that they give, and there's a
Mhm.
lot in that scroll. And if you're like in a theater and you can't rewind it and reread parts, it's a little more difficult to empathize with Roy, because when you see him throughout this picture, it's like you get it. He wants to live longer, but he's going around and mass murdering people with like zero like regret or guilt or anything like that. He's just kind of a killer. But if well, this guy was a slave and they had him go off world to fight these wars and they treated him like shit. Probably his philosophy at that point was, well, I'm worthless to them, so now they're worthless to me. And it's not until those final moments that he realizes that there is some peace and beauty in the world, but now it's gone, and maybe he should have embraced that instead of, trying to chase after more life.
Well, it's funny because Ridley Scott kind of touched on this with another one of his franchises, Alien, when he made
Mm.
Prometheus. The
Yeah.
whole idea of, the engineers seeding planet Earth and this, probably a bunch of other worlds, but then deciding that they had messed up because humanity didn't turn out the way they had hoped. So they tried to send the xenomorphs
Yeah.
to planet Earth to kind of clean up the mess. Roy Batty is interesting because he's kind of on Earth, from what I can piece together, as sort of a revenge mission against his creators, a quest to find out why they, made people like him, and also to see if there's something that can be done to reverse to extend his life so that he can actually have, to use your phrase, some agency, the dignity of a life form that gets to live beyond just 4 years. Most of that is a slave with memory implants. So they're all crazy. They don't know what is real and what's not. Which
Mm.
is going back to what you were saying about Turkle saying that his Tyrell character is a replicant. The bit where Batty like takes out his eyes or like thumbs his eyes, that didn't seem like he was doing that to another, you know, android. That
Mm,
was very human.
mm. Yeah, and it's sort of like he's taking away the eyes of God, because this is the guy who created him. And, like he says, because he's going after the guy earlier who's making the eyes, and
Mhm.
now he's taking the eyes away from the guy who gave them to him. In a way, it's like, you obviously don't care about what I've seen, so now I'm gonna take away something from you, and, he kills him in the most brutal way possible, but, I mean, there's something very poetic about it because it really is about, um how you sort of see the world through a certain point of view, and then you have God who sees everything, but it's like, what if we end up having God see nothing? And there's something kind of beautiful and horribly disturbing in that scene all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, um, I know you talked about, Companion somewhat,
Mhm.
a while ago, but this movie also has shades of that. I mean, Blade Runner, even though it didn't do very well, has because we're talking about it, however many decades
Mm,
later, it did develop a cult following and then just a following. I mean, it's a huge movie on the kinda sci-fi pop culture landscape now. But one of the things I think it's interesting is it has sparked a lot of, and you can say this about Philip K. Dick in general. He wrote "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
mhm,
A number of other stories have been adapted to films to varying degrees of success. But taking the ideas that are kind of planted in Blade Runner and works similar to it, and just say, okay, we can create artificial life, artificial intelligence. What does that mean for the thing that is created? I mean, you can go,
mm,
but you can look at Data on Star Trek, which came 5 years after this, and his whole arc going from Next Generation all the way through the movies and beyond is he's a synthetic person, but he has the ability and the desire from being around humans to start to experience humanity or to just
mm,
kind of touch it. So like how is that different than giving my toaster feelings? Do we feel a certain way about it because it looks like us?
mm,
But I mentioned companion because that's the idea of we have this highly realistic robot that is basically a sex bot, but it's also like with the replicants, programmed with memories and a personality and wants and needs and desires with parameters that can be toggled on an iPad, and
mhm,
yet it is able to gain sentience and realize the injustice of its own situation. And you look at the monstrous ends to which Iris, the great Sophie Thatcher, is used in that movie. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of Blade Runner in that. I can almost see Companion as sort of a prequel or
mhm,
existing in the same universe as Blade Runner. Maybe the company that made Iris is owned by the Tyrell Corporation.
mm. Yeah, because that's before, the whole mutiny and everything, and who knows? They did make pleasure bots, I think. They established that in 2049 when they have, like, the whole hologram three-way scene, and
Well, I think wasn't Daryl Hannah's character in the original Blade Runner? Wasn't she? I don't know if Pleasurebot was. They referred to her as something like that. And when she came up on screen, and M. Emmett Walsh is describing her, you cut to Deckard, and Harrison Ford has this smirk on his face, like, yeah.
and I gotta say, Daryl Hannah is incredible in this movie.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
not just the acrobatics that she does, which is like half of it was really her doing that, and the other half of it was like stuntmen to like finish some flips and stuff like that. But like just the stuff she does with her head, where she's kind of like going like this, like it looks robotic, but it's
Mhm.
very subtle. It's not overdone. And the movie looks like a painting a lot of times, like especially the scenes they do in the Burberry building, which they weren't like the production wasn't thrilled with filming there because every movie was filmed there. But
Mm.
Ridley Scott knew how to make it look different. And that's the amazing thing with it. The thing with filmmaking is it is a technical field. you can make a movie and get away with mediocre performances, such as some of the Star Wars films, such as Barry Lyndon, even Blade Runner. I think
Hey,
Harrison Ford is.
I'm gonna give you a hard disagree. You've trashed Barry Lyndon,
I love
or
that
at least
movie. Yeah.
um, Ryan O'Neill's performance in that
Yeah.
twice, and I will not have it. I think he's brilliant in that movie, playing a
Okay.
complete cipher and a con man.
Huh.
But
Okay.
okay,
I'm gonna buy it, so I'm gonna see it again anyways. So
is
I
that on
will.
4K?
I don't know. I think it's
Oh,
Blu-ray, but it's like a $40 Blu-ray, but I still want it. Um, but no, his best acting is in that movie where he goes to the beach to read a letter from his wife, and then he finds or his lover. I don't know what the hell. Yeah, I never saw that movie. And he gets
love
the.
story.
It might have been called that. Anyways, he reads the letter and then he puts it down and he just goes, "Oh man, oh god, oh man, oh god." That's his best. And he was
That's
pissed
the
at the
meme. Yeah,
director. Yeah.
yeah.
He told the director, like, don't put that in. I don't want I look stupid. But in the director's defense, nobody would remember that movie if it weren't for that scene. So, but the Ryan O'Neal, I'm kind of mixed on his performance in it. But like the point is that you have movies where I would say Harrison Ford's performance in this movie, he kind of seems like he doesn't know how he's supposed to feel or what he's doing. He just because Harrison Ford kind of has this thing where he just seems bored a lot, or you could call him Harrison Bored, I guess. And yeah, in this film in particular, there's just like not like what can you say about Deckard that's discernible, other than his occupation or what he has to do or that he
or
drinks.
or his look. I mean,
Yeah.
he's his performance is basically all aesthetics. I mean,
Mhm.
he very much feels like an archetype of a character from like 1940s detective movies,
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
created by people who didn't actually watch 1940s detective movies. Because I mean, we mentioned Bogart. There's a lot more going on in those films than just the guy in the cool hat who's got a voiceover and a dame that walks into his office.
Mhm.
But that seems to be all that's really going on here. I feel like there was a lot more put into the production design, and creating this atmosphere than there was, and that happens with movies all the time. It's really disappointing, than dealing with the script. If they'd spent as much time on the screenplay and as much money as they did on the production, well, it would have been twice as expensive, but could have been successful and even more memorable potentially.
Yeah, but there are just and I think that's where the second film improved upon with the first film, where the first film had a lot of these ideas and the second one fleshed them out a lot more. Although they weren't flesh, they were replicants. But
I
I yeah, I'm
There's a
sorry.
difference between fleshing out ideas and putting a lot of words on the screen.
Right. Well, and the criticism with this film is that well, they're not saying enough. It's too vague. And then they make a sequel where they're like, okay, well, now we're not as vague. And then there's a complaint that, well, now you're saying too much. So it's kind of hard to find the balance with
No,
it.
it's not. If you're talented, it's not hard to find the balance. You don't swing from one extreme to the other and say, "Well, I did the opposite of what you said you hated." That's not that's not talent, that's not art. It's just going in the opposite direction.
Yet
I mean, that's things
2049
like
isn't too explanatory. Like there's still a lot of reflection in it, like the first one. So I think it balanced it pretty well. But that's just my opinion.
I don't to me Blade Runner 2049 is Denis Villeneuve always having wanted to make a Blade Runner movie, and studios being so desperate, particularly at that time, to
Mm.
resurrect any IP because movies were dying. Like, hey, people remember this one. It's a
Mm.
cult hit now, so maybe they'll come in droves to see it if we bring it back. And they didn't.
Yeah.
It's like, Denis, was there a reason you wanted to make this movie other than it'd be cool to play in the sandbox? I didn't get that feeling at all.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing with 2049 is that it was advertised sort of the same way Blade Runner was. Like I remember watching the trailers and I'm like, oh, they're making it into like an action film. What do they do? And then you see the movie and no, it's not at all like that. And I think a lot of audiences, they go in there, and I'm like, why am I watching these long shots of this guy, walking in the desert? What's with this like sequence where I can't see anything and these guys are fighting in the middle of a rainstorm and the speakers are shattering my eardrums and my butt. So, you have I think that was a movie that was also misunderstood, but I kind of like movies that kind of make you leave you with more questions than answers, and they kind of leave you with a little more to think about. And yeah, there's a lot of flatness in Blade Runner. Like, it's a lot of pretty shots. The plot, if you think about it, is pretty basic, which is like one thing that made me like the second one a little more, is that the second one felt a little more deeper. It felt more about getting into the main character's head rather than us trying to figure out what's going on in his head, when most of the time he's just getting shit faced and then trying to figure out the next place to go, like the whole scene where he's looking at the picture. There's nothing really deeper going on there other than he's trying to, and that scene never made sense to me. Like, why did the little scale, like hidden in the corner of the picture, why did that stand out to him? Why did he care? Why was that like a main piece of evidence? But there's a lot of plot holes in this movie. But I think when a movie is aesthetically done well enough, you can forgive it for a lot of things, because we go to the movies to go somewhere else. Sometimes we don't, but a lot of times we go there to be in a place that we haven't been before, to be in a dark room. When we used to want to do that until Netflix gets rid of theaters, to be in a dark room that will transport us to another world. And if you could transport someone to another world while also giving them something to think about, I think you've accomplished something as a director. Now, does the movie need a little more specificity and a little less detective stuff? Yeah. But I really appreciated what it did. And this is a movie that Ridley Scott made after one of his brothers died of cancer. And,
Talking about
there's
2049.
no, the original Blade Runner.
I didn't realize he had more than one brother. I knew he and Tony Scott were brothers, but I didn't realize he had another brother.
Yeah, me neither until I watched the features today. Because he said, no, I know, I did know that. I take that back. I know one of his brothers died. I didn't know it was of cancer. I know Tony, or from what I vaguely remember, I could be wrong. I think he committed suicide. I don't
Yeah.
know why. Yeah, which is horrible. I don't, that's really, but when his brother died of cancer, he makes this movie about these things that sort of want to live longer and want to know the meaning of their existence. And I feel like he might have tapped into some of those personal feelings and put it into the movie. And I kind of like the fact that some of it's vague and some of it's confusing, and you have to figure out, like the whole unicorn thing. I kind of like the fact, because you see the unicorn and then he holds it in the end. And according to Ridley Scott, where he basically said, if you don't get it, then you're like Beavis and Butthead. Uh, like, that's literally what he said. Then, you don't get the point of the movie. But I kind of like the fact that you can interpret it your own way. And you could say, well, I think Deckard's a replicant, or I think Deckard's a human, And the nice thing is with the second one is that they don't give you a straight answer, whether he's a human or a replicant. They keep it a mystery, which Villeneuve has said that he wanted to do, because I think when you just kind of slide a note under the table and give everyone the answers, then you don't make a movie that's going to be as timeless as this one.
A lot to unpack there, but I mean, I think, I don't like it when movies are ambiguous. If I get the sense that the director or the writer director did what you just said, which is, what do you think it means?
Mhm.
Or it's up to you. I'm like, no, it's not up to me. I'm paying my money to go and be entertained and to watch a story that's being told by a storyteller, not someone who throws their arms up in the air and says, well, I'll just leave it up to them. There's a difference between that and the artist knowing what the answer is, seeding the movie with clues one way and or the other, and then having the audience walk away thinking about what it all means. Because I think there's too much bad art out there. Going back to kind of something you said earlier about, filmmakers thinking the audiences are stupid, there is very much that mentality of like, we don't have to figure this out. They're not going to know, they're not going to care, or they're going to think it's deeper than it actually is. I don't need to settle this argument one way or the other because, it's all whatever they think it is, man. And I think one of my problems with Blade Runner 2049 is it's also a gimmick picture because once again, and this is part of, I think, a response to the fandom and the reaction to the original Blade Runner from previous decades is like, what if we have the ambiguity still 40 years later in a movie? Like, how about you just tell me what you have on your mind? Because if all you've got is it's another movie where Ryan Gosling is running around as Deckard, essentially doing the same stuff Harrison Ford was doing essentially in the first movie, except we don't know if he's a robot or not, like in the first movie, like, what are we doing here?
Well, the second movie, we know he's a robot from the very first scene.
Right,
although we do question if he's because the whole human child birth and if he's
yes,
and, yeah. But the nice thing is at the end we find out he's not the kid, but still by being a replicant, he's more human than human. And
right, but there's still that jerking around of like, is this some kind of a divine thing? How does that even work? How would that work? Why would it work? Again, there's not enough new stuff there that wasn't possibly thought of or litigated coming out of the first movie to make me want to even know more.
Right.
Like, I feel like that movie should have been 70 minutes long. Instead, it's like 3 times that length.
Yeah. Without
the substance to back it up. In my not so humble opinion.
Yeah, there's a very popular movie. I won't go into it again because, well, the fan base, they get riled up over it. But
which one? Don't leave me hanging. Which one?
Sinners. That the mid-credit sequence, holy fucking shit, that could have been cut short. But anyways, that's just
hard disagree.
Again, it still made my top 10, but God forbid you don't say it's the best fucking movie ever. Everyone's gonna want to burn you at the stake. But anyway,
is that a vampire pun? But no, people who say people who say it's the best movie ever need to watch more movies. I love Sinners. It's higher up on my list than 10. But yeah, I mean, people can like or dislike movies. Whenever you're online and someone starts railing against a movie you love, all you have to do is keep scrolling.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, I guess I got mad about it because when I gave my initial reaction, people would say things like "fuck you, cracker" and "shut your bitch ass up" to me. So yeah, when that kind of commentary came through, it's like, you're just making your point look bad and you're making the movie look worse and you're adding fuel to a fire that doesn't even need to be lit. So that's
right.
why,
and that's I mean, it's horrible to just resort to race.
Yeah.
I don't care who it's coming from. Like when you throw that out as your first reaction, instead of like, oh, I read what you had to say, or wow, we come at it from a different place. It's you don't understand this because you're not the demographic that this movie was made for, allegedly. And I think that movie was made for everyone.
Yeah, I kind of called someone out on that in Facebook and won. But anyways, but I did it with respect and kindness when he didn't, and that's why I won. And
there you go. Take the high road, Mike. Always.
Exactly. Well, except when I send boxes of shit to people who rip me off. But no, I'm just kidding.
Don't confess any crimes here on a live stream.
It's not a crime. It's a legal website. Dakota Johnson used it, actually. Yeah, shitsenders.com. But I didn't resort to doing it. But the point we're making before I completely negated it is that it's good to have a differentiation of opinion on movies
Yeah.
without telling someone that their opinion is invalid. Well, you didn't get everything in the movie, so you're a moron. It's like when we start to go down that road, then we begin to lose some brain cells and critical thinking as an audience because we're not listening to other people's point of view or respecting them. And that's how we wind up in worlds like Blade Runner, where humanity doesn't get along. So what do? They create robots to fight their fights for them, to build their buildings for them. And eventually those robots go, wait a minute, I don't need to be treated this way. I'm becoming sentient. And it's the cycle of life. In a weird way, I kind of found Blade Runner a little hopeful because at least there are off colonies where you get away from Earth. So before global warming extincts the human race in 2050, we will have an opportunity to go somewhere else.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Mike, those colonies are run and owned by the same corporations and governments that destroyed Earth.
Oh yeah, you're right. We're all screwed.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's
well, I was gonna say there's a lot of fan theories and stuff that have come out from Blade Runner, and also with Alien. I mean, you've probably seen these, but there's theories that connect Alien, Blade Runner, also the Kurt Russell movie Soldier, mostly regarding like Weyland-Yutani. There's the thought that Tyrell Corporation came up with the androids that colonized the planets that were owned by Weyland-Yutani, because that was their whole motto, is building better worlds. And then in the opening sequence of Joss Whedon's Firefly, when Mal Reynolds is using the cannon to shoot down the invading ships, you can see the Weyland-Yutani logo, a digital version of it on the site. It's kind of fun.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never seen Firefly. Everyone tells me to go see it. Oh, I'll eventually see it.
It's a tight 13 episode show that was gone.
Oh, it's
way
only
too
13
soon.
episodes. Oh, I'll totally see it then. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got to watch Serenity, which is the movie that came out, like the movie capper to the TV series, which is also fantastic. The first time I'd ever seen Chiwetel Ejiofor in anything, and he played the villain.
I love Chiwetel Ejiofor. I think he's a phenomenal actor. Very well. Did he win the Oscar for 12 years? Or I don't think so. Someone else won. Yeah, I don't know who won. Fuck that guy. But you ever have that feeling in the Oscars when you see someone winning? I gotta
all the time.
I felt that way when Sean Penn won for Milk over Mickey Rourke, because I feel like Mickey Rourke poured his heart and soul into that role. And if you've seen the life and times of Harvey Milk sounds like this. Hello, I'm Harvey Milk. He doesn't sound like this. Hi, I'm Harvey Milk. I'm gay. Which is how Sean Penn played him.
Which doesn't sound that much off from his portrayal in I Am Sam. But anyhow.
Yeah, pretty much. Never go full R. Yeah. I mean, Lockjaw was like kind of cartoony, but he was he was supposed. The thing is that like if you see PTA movies, like they're both like gritty and super cartoony. So like he kind of worked for that world. Like he's fucking hilarious in that movie. Like the whole raped in reverse thing and the I'm not gay because he's wearing a tight shirt. Like I know but oh my god, it had me in stitches.
That's what it takes, huh? Anyhow,
yeah. Look, I have autism, so I'm a little R. So I kind of like that movie.
Oh my gosh, Mike.
That should be my logo as a critic. A little R, but knows how to review movies.
I just got an idea for a documentary about the history of the word retarded in movies and like pop culture and stuff, and how like it eventually, there was the big thing like back in the 80s, but then it became taboo. You
Yeah.
call the movie rated R.
Yeah, oh no. I did do that joke in high school once in a video.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. It
wow.
was I think it was for like The Exorcist, and like someone turns into Michael Jackson instead of the devil. It was really dumb.
What?
Yeah. And
Do you
then
have this movie still? I'd love to see it.
I do. I gotta find it. I gotta find the DVD, but I should upload it. I think if I upload it, there are some fans within our community who will be offended because they want to cancel everyone over everything. I am actually writing a screenplay about. Oh, never mind. I don't want to make that public, but I'll tell you off camera about that. Yeah. But yeah, Blade Runner. I think it's a movie that you know what, despite its flaws, and it does have many, Harrison Board for one, and like just some scenes that like the photo scene, stuff like that. Uh and kind of a basic story, but still, man, like when you get those dreamy visuals and it's still making you feel something and making you think, it still winds up being a classic 4 out of 4 for me. But it wasn't there originally. For a while it was a 3, then it went to a 3.5, and then it went to a 4. But maybe it'll go back down again.
I'd give it a 3 3/4,
Uh,
but only for that scene we talked about
a
earlier
3.
that does not belong in the in the movie.
Well, there's
The
a
assault scene.
yeah, I mean oh my god. Yeah, that was horrible. I don't know, like, and the thing is when they were filming that scene, like Sean Young was crying, like after they were filming it. So to like make her laugh and like let her know not to take all this seriously, like Harrison Ford mooned her, and it kind of made her giggle a bit, which is kind of weird. It's like, why didn't you just like hug her or something? You didn't have to show her your ass to like make her laugh. But
So let me get this straight. To make up for the fact that she was traumatized for having to do a scene in which she was sexually assaulted, her
he shows
male
his ass.
co-star made her feel better by showing more of his exposed naked body. Yeah, that
Yeah. I guess he
Stupid.
didn't know how to quite read the room in that situation. But yeah, I mean, this movie is an example of, if you've ever worked in movies, which I have, one thing they'll never tell you is that they're not fun 98% of the time. Most of the time you work for, I wouldn't say the directors are inept, but the pressures of the production is so much that most can't handle it. And it's really hard to have a clear vision and to communicate that with people. And you end up working on these sets for like 17-hour, 18-hour days. And then you see the movie and you go, I went through all that hell for that fucking piece of shit. And Blade Runner is one of those instances where you go, you know what? I work on a lot of these crappy movies, but once in a while, you get to have something that you're proud of that turns out to be special and, ends up becoming a classic. So, if anything, that movie encourages you to stick with your guns. Maybe a double barrel handgun shotgun. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think this is one of the other reasons I don't like 2049. I think Blade Runner, probably the director's cut. I don't even know if I've seen all 5 of the cuts that are out there. I've seen, I think, at least 3. But I'll just say the director's cut as a shorthand, no narration and all that stuff. I feel like it is a masterpiece. It was way ahead of its time. I'm glad to see that it found an audience and was so influential. It does take a couple of times to kind of get into the rhythm of it, unless someone, like maybe today, someone describing Blade Runner to someone who's never seen it can say like, oh, it's like a futuristic kind of Terrence Malick film. Don't watch the trailer, just go in and watch it. Because if there's any kind of expectation like, oh, it's Indiana Jones or it's Han Solo and it's the future and kind of dystopian, you're going to call to mind probably a bunch of movies that came after Blade Runner that are more kind of whiz bang than this movie actually is. So if you just go in with a very high level synopsis and a comparison to, I think Malik is probably the best, one, then people discover it for the first time, maybe get all they need out of it once, but they'll want to watch it again, but not because they're like, I don't understand what's going on here at all.
Yeah, and well, and the other thing is, I think we have our blockbusters, we have our movies to escape, and to feel good and all that. I mean, especially if you see the ending of the theatrical cut, where they're using leftover shots from The Shining, and he's driving in the car with Rachel, and they're gonna be happily ever after. Those movies don't stand out as much as when Deckard goes up, leaves with Rachel in the elevator, and we don't know what's going to happen to them. Like, those movies stand the test of time a little more, but I do like my entertainment too. Like Companion, that movie has a lot of thought to it, but it's also pretty, pretty straight to the point and pretty easy to understand for an audience. And those have their places too. But man, when you have a movie that looks like nothing and it also has a story that makes you feel something, the world is yours. And maybe I'll see a blip that says that outside of my house one day. Anyway, catch that reference. But
that was yeah, and I immediately thought of Scarface, which, so bravo, but that was a deep cut, sir.
Yeah, I know that movie also, like, one of those, I was wondering how they did a live score for that movie, but that movie is like all like
Synth, right?
Yeah, synthetic, just like the replicant. So I'm just wondering, like, when you saw it there, was it just like a dude on a keyboard or something like that? Or
no, they had, I'm not sure like all the instruments, but it wasn't, as I recall, as big a presence on stage as when they have like the full orchestra, but yeah, a lot of synth.
Yeah, well, I would say one awesome event that I went to is they did Lord of the Rings Return of the King with a live orchestra, and they even had the actual like choral parts. So you need that. But I will never forget how disappointed I was when I saw John Williams live, and they were going to do Duel of the Fates, and it was only instrumental.
Oh no.
So none of the Kora Bara, like none of that. And I just sat there, I'm like, what the hell? Like, that's what I came here for. And you don't have I don't know, but still, it was John fucking Williams. But
yeah, next weekend I'm going to see they're doing Raiders of the Lost Ark at the CSO. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I saw that at a drive-in once too. That was pretty cool. But Ian, if you want to check out his stuff, go to kickingtheseat.com. He has lots of great stuff on YouTube, lots of great reviews. I think I'm going to be on your show on Tuesday to talk about Project Hail Mary, which many are hailing as an instant classic. I'm not quite on that boat, but we'll see what my thoughts and Ian's are on it.
Yeah, Mike, did you read this is I think where the dividing line is going to be, and maybe not, because I know a couple of people who've read the novel and also appreciate the movie. I think that is scientifically impossible, but have you read the book by Andy Weir?
No, but I have read Have Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I have read that, and I can see why Blade Runner, like, visually, it is exactly what Philip K. Like, when they showed the visual effects to Philip K. Dickens, I said it right? Okay, okay,
yeah,
Philip K. Dick. I'm getting him confused with another author. But when they,
oh my god, Philip K. Dickens. I want to see the Blade Runner version of A Christmas Carol.
I gotta retire Santa Claus, or
God replicate us, everyone. There you go.
Yeah, maybe all the ghosts are, things that were retired, and they're trying to convince Scrooge not to kill the last few. And then Scrooge finds out that Tiny Tim is a robot, and then at the very end, he decides fuck it and kills him anyways. But that would be a very different ending.
And then he assaults Mrs. Cratchit in the apartment.
Yeah, he has a rape scene in there, but God, yeah.
Why, Mike? Again, I hate to harp on this. 'Cause I know we're wrapping up, but
Yeah.
why? Why did they include this terrible scene in this otherwise classic movie?
It's horrible. It's a terrible scene that is not aged well, and even in the behind the scenes when they're talking about it, they're like, "Oh yeah," and then he like shoves her, and I'm like, "What do you mean? Oh yeah? Like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like that, dude? He should be
It-
in jail."
This is why Harvey Weinstein was allowed to exist. That
Yeah,
kind of casual permissiveness where it's not even registering
yeah,
to, I'll say it, probably mostly the male members of that crew and even the cast. It sucks.
yeah. Very
Uh,
Shakespeare in Love. Yeah, but I did talk about that. Oh yeah, I actually got a lot of hits on that little short that I got for my show on that. But Ian, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys liked what you saw or listened to, I think you all know how YouTube works at this point. So click subscribe, click on the little thumbs up, not the thumbs down. Even if you do, oh wait, they don't have the thumbs down anymore, do they? Ha ha! I'll never know if you don't like it. But guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll let you know what the next episode is. I gotta figure out what it is. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe Citizen Kane. We'll see.
mm.
I could, but that man. Well, I got enough time. I can go to Xanadu and do all the research I can with it. All right, folks. Thanks so much. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. All right. Oh, I gotta click the button now. Bye.